Greetings, loved ones. Today we have a great article from marriage.com, and we're going to talk about 6 reasons for spousal abuse in marriage. We're going to talk about trigger thoughts, inability to tolerate being hurt, growing up in an abusive family, lack of boundaries in a marriage, lack of empathy, and substance abuse. Help us get these messages out. Please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button and the notification bell, and please share these messages with others, because you never know, by doing so you could save a life. It's alarmingly common. People get married, hope for a happily ever after, and when they look at their marriage one day, the illusion of a kind and loving spouse is far gone. The person they are supposed to trust with their life and happiness is the very person who causes them most sadness, and unfortunately often jeopardizes their health and safety by indulging in spousal abuse. Although such relationships have been under psychological examination for decades, it is still impossible to pinpoint the causes of an abusive relationship, nor what triggers the abuser to engage in a violent episode. However, there are certain common traits of many such marriages and of many perpetrators of abuse. So here's a list of 5 common reasons why spousal abuse happens in marriage and what causes physical abuse and why do abusers abuse. Number 1, trigger thoughts. How do abusive relationships start? Research shows what directly precipitates violence in a marital argument is a sequence of very detrimental thoughts which frequently present an entirely distorted image of reality. It is not uncommon for a relationship to have its set ways of arguing that often go nowhere and are truly unproductive. But in violent relationships, these thoughts trigger abuse and are potentially dangerous for the victim. For example, a few such cognitive distortions that often ring in the perpetrator's mind or in the back of his or her mind are, she's being disrespectful, I can't allow that, or she'll think I'm weak. Who does she think she is speaking to me that way? Such an idiot just can't be brought to reason otherwise by force, etc., etc., etc. You know, once such beliefs come to the abuser's mind, it seems that there is no going back and the violence becomes imminent. Number 2 is inability to tolerate being hurt. It is difficult to be hurt by the one we love and to whom we committed our lives. Living with someone, sharing everyday stress and unpredictable hardships will inevitably lead to being hurt and disappointed sometimes. But most of us deal with such situations without becoming violent or psychologically abusive towards our spouses. Yet, perpetrators of spousal abuse exhibit an inability to tolerate being done wrong or their perception as being damaged and offended. These individuals exhibiting abusive behavior react to pain by inflicting pain on others. They cannot allow themselves to feel anxiety or sorrow or to appear weak or vulnerable or to be put down in any way. What makes a relationship abusive in such cases is that they charge and attack relentlessly. Number 3, growing up in an abusive family. Although not every abuser comes from an abusive family or chaotic childhood, the majority of aggressors have experienced childhood trauma. Similarly, many victims of spousal abuse come from a family in which the dynamics were toxic and filled with either psychological and physical abuse. In that way, both the husband and the wife often unconsciously perceive the spousal abuse in marriage as a norm, maybe even as an expression of closeness and affection. Number 4, lack of boundaries in a marriage. Abusive marriages are often characterized by what might be described as a lack of boundaries. In other words, unlike intimacy in a healthy romantic relationship, people in abusive marriages typically believe in an unbreakable bond between them. This might answer the question that people have about why abuse happens in even so-called loving relationships. The bond is far from romance. It presents a pathological dissolution of boundaries that are necessary for a relationship. It becomes easier both to abuse a spouse and to tolerate being abused, as neither one feels separated from the other. Number 5, lack of empathy. Another reason the aggressor commits violence against someone with whom they share their life is lack of empathy, or a seriously diminished feeling of empathy that gives way to impulsivity. A person with abusive tendencies often believes that they have almost supernatural power to understand others. They often do see others' limitations and weaknesses quite clearly. This is why when confronted with their lack of empathy in an argument or at a psychotherapy session, they passionately dispute such a claim. What eludes them is that empathy doesn't mean just seeing others' flaws and insecurities. It means it has an emotional component and comes with care for and the sharing of others' feelings. In fact, it was found in a study conducted by the University of Barcelona that putting the abuser in the victim's shoes using an immersive virtual reality system, the abusers were able to realize how fearful their victims felt while being abused, and it did improve their perception of emotions. And number 6, substance abuse. I want to be clear here. Substance abuse is not the cause of abuse, but it can make abuse more violent. According to the American Journal of Public Health, it has also been found that these two are interrelated also in the sense that sometimes the perpetrators of the abuse also force their victims into using alcohol and drugs. And many episodes of violence involve the use of drugs or alcohol. So let's talk about some gender dynamics in spousal abuse. The prevalence of spousal abuse in the LGBTQ community is underreported because of a fear of further stigmatism as a community. The ostracization also exists when gender roles are reversed in heterosexual relationships where the abusive spouse's behavior is not given much importance when reported if the abuser is a woman. This can further embolden the abuser to continue the cycle of violence. You know, marriage is difficult and it takes a lot of work, but it should never have spousal abuse. No one should suffer abuse from those who are meant to protect them from harm. With 1 in 3 women experiencing domestic violence and 15 million children witnessing the violence each year, the question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. And those who suffer violence, they need to know that those who love them and those who don't even know them will step out and reach out to them, give them the help and the courage they need to leave before it's too late. Help us get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit that like button and hit the notification bell and share these messages with others because you never know. Just by doing so, you could save a life. If you're a victim of violence, I want you to listen to me. Let's get rid of the lies. Let's speak truth right now. You are valued. You are loved. You are intelligent and you are beautiful. And God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It's not your fault, and abuse is not love. That's the truth. If you're a victim of violence, reach out to somebody today. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help. And if you know of a child who is being abused or suffering violence, report it to the authorities. Tomorrow we're going to talk about 25 relationship red flags. Until then, God bless you.